call to order this. Thank you. Thank you, Communications. Now that we're recording, I'd like to call to order this committee of the whole agenda of June 25th, 2026. At this point in time, I'll put a call out if there are any declarations of interest on the agenda today. Seeing no hands, I will proceed to business arising from minutes. We've already had a discussion, so we'll go to, we do not have any delegations this morning. And so we can go on to determination of items requiring separate discussion. So if you review the list that is in section 6, we have 6 different items. I ask at this point if you could please raise a hand of virtual, raise your on. Oh, I have to come up with better terminology. Your virtual hand is in the ones that you're clicking, and I'll go down the list and hear which item is to be pulled. So we're going to start with Councillor Gregg.
6B and 6D, please.
Okay, B as in Bob, D as in dog. Okay, thank you. And Councillor Eccles?
C as in cat.
C as in cat, thank you. And anything else? Not seeing any further hands. So then I would like to then move on to the consent agenda motion that the following consent agenda items be received and that staff be authorized to take the actions necessary to give effect to the recommendations in the staff reports and that the correspondence be supported or received for information as recommended in the consent agenda. It would be for items 6A, E, and F at this point. Thank you. I've got it moved by Councillor Hutchison, seconded by Councillor Dickert. It's now on the floor for discussion. Okay, seeing no hands, then I'll ask you to use your real hand. All those in favor? Thank you. Excellent. So that motion is carried. Thank you. And we'll return to those items after we go to section 7. So we'll move on to section 7 then. And the first one is item 7A. It is the Urban Roads and Roads Exchange Task Force minutes. And we will have some staff speaking to this. So I am going to put out the recommended motion first. So it's recommended that the Urban Roads and Road Exchange Task Force minutes dated May 26, 2026 be adopted as presented and that the following resolutions contained therein be endorsed. Number 1, that the report TRUR 2326 be received and that the County of Grays support the following as it pertains to the road transfers considered version B. In the report, which includes an updated full lane replacement fixed transition funding model for 10 years of $33,671,286, and the traffic signal operational funding transitional over year 1 through 5 of $484,961. And development charges one-time payment of $5,514,527, and the future project transfer costs, transfer/costs of $2,420,229, and that the bylaw to assume and remove roads from Grey County, the Grey County road system, be brought forward for council's consideration, reflecting a legal transfer date of June 1st, 2027. And that the warden and clerk be authorized to execute the road transfer agreements with member municipalities. So may I ask for a motion to ask for a mover and a seconder to get that on the floor? It's moved by Councillor Gregg, seconded by Councillor Eccles. It's now on the floor for discussion. I'm going to, at this point in time then, I'm going to look to Director Hoy to provide some introduction to this topic as we move into discussion. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Warden. Basically, I just kind of reiterate what I said last week, that this was our, one of our 3 options out of our workshop. Lots of good feedback from the municipalities and especially the public works staff, of course. And so this was kind of our option B that went through the task force. There was some discussion after about additional questions and that type of thing. But we were comfortable with this funding because of the delays. Funding is probably in this year's budget, a lot of it, so it's not as big a number as you think originally. And we're ready to move forward with this motion on behalf of the task force, I guess.
It's now on the floor for discussion. I'm going to go to Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Warden Matrasovs, and good morning, County Council. Firstly, I appreciate the opportunity for further review and time to discuss the outcome of the task force workshop that was held on May 26th. And I do want to thank county staff and Hanover staff for their assistance and input with the amendment that I am proposing, which is to further advance version B. And I propose the motion be amended to incorporate the following, and I have a summary. Thank you, Clerk Tara. Number one, requirement that the transitional funding payment be subject to a minimum annual increase equal to the greater of 5% and the increase to the Grey County Major Construction Capital Budget for the current year. Number two, inclusion of a 5-year decreasing operations transition allocation for incremental operation impacts to receiving municipalities, and that amount is $730,783. Number three, a requirement that the road transfer agreement removes language that makes transition payments contingent on the county's annual budgetary process to reflect the fixed minimum payment obligations approved by council, and inclusion of a clause allowing either party to request a review of transfer configuration where an updated transportation master plan changes the functional classification, jurisdictional rationale, or regional role of a transferred road. Number four, a requirement that prior to the execution of any road transfer agreement, Grey County will provide the receiving municipality with all available condition assessment data, inspection records, CCTV reports, asset inventory data, citywide records, capital planning information, and known deficiencies for all infrastructure proposed to be transferred. And finally, a clause directing that costs associated with the above be included in the 2027 budget process.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Bourignon, you were seconding?
Yes, I'll second the motion.
Okay, thank you. So it's on the floor for discussion. So Madam Clerk, if you could please provide the motion that is going to be considered on the screen for the benefit of anyone who is following the meeting, and for our committee of the whole members to be able to refer to anything specific. And we will now thank you for doing that. We will now then open it up for discussion. So I'll look for if you can use your virtual hand if you would like to be added to the discussion. Okay, we're going to begin with Councillor McQueen.
Yes, Madam Warden, and to the amending motion. I guess question of clarity, and I think the last clause says subject to 2027's budget. I think it was mentioned at our last county council meeting that the rough numbers will add $7 million to the 2027 budget. Is that a confirmation of that? Because I know that was what the Treasury head of Treasury Department was saying, that it was going to add an additional $7 million to the 2027 budget. So I don't know if there's any clarity. It was in front of everybody, but I just remember that number was mentioned, that it was 7 million.
Okay, thank you. So let me put that to, it looks like the CAO is going to respond.
Yeah, thank you. And through you, Warden, and thank you, Councillor McQueen, for that question. Yeah, as noted at the last council meeting, there's a question asked with respect to clarification regarding what is currently the estimated budget that was considered and projected as part of the 2026 approved budget. So as noted at the meeting, the 2027 projected budget was estimating a levy increase of approximately just over 7.2 million, and that's pre-growth. That increase over the 2026 budget. The estimated new assessment growth for 2027 that was included in the projected budget was 1.4 million, and therefore 2027 projected budget was estimating approximately 5.9 million, including growth, which equates to about a 6.93% increase over the 2026 budget. So just to give you a sense of what that was in terms of the estimated budget. No doubt there's been some additional pressures that we've seen with respect to that will likely increase some of those numbers. Obviously, that'll all be part of the discussion, and staff are currently working through all those details to be able to bring forward a draft budget in the next couple of months back to this council, and then obviously for consideration and approval for the new incoming council early in their term. So, but that's just gives you a sense of what was projected in as part of the approved budget for 2027.
Okay, thank you. Next, we'll go to Councillor Gregg.
Can I have a follow-up?
Oh, sorry. Yes, follow up, Councillor McQueen.
Hey, just a quick follow-up. Thanks for that, Randy, for that. I just want to also add a summary of a couple other things that's going to affect our overall budget is obviously the 196,000 that's with regards to the option one and green and gray. And also I see later on in our report, there's an additional 2.8 for conservation authorities requirements for our 2027 budget as well. So I support this resolution. I think it's important that it does include that it'll to be included in the 2027 budget to be determined. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go to the Deputy CAO who's raised his hand.
Thank you. Good morning, County Council. Thank you, Madam Warden. Just for greater clarity, the 2.8 million, which is in the Conservation Authority report, would not be a 2027 budget impact. That is predicted for 2028. So it will be included as part of this year's budget process as part of the draft 2028 budget.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. We'll go to Councillor Gregg.
Thank you. And just a couple questions. I guess one for staff and one for Councillor Patterson. I'm in agreement with a lot of the material within the proposed motion, but when we set out as a committee, there was a very basic formula that calculated the cost, which was effectively A, which equated to the cost of the rural road exchanges. So we had a cost of taking on the new roads, bringing them up to county standard, which was offset by the savings coming off the books from the roads that we were giving up. And we used that's A. B was savings projected from the urban road download to the urban communities, and that equated to C. So I guess the question to staff is, can they comment effectively on where this leaves us with that net operating or net capital increase forecast annually as an outcome of the proposed amended motion at this time? The second question, I guess, to Councillor Patterson is, in constructing the motion, the committee goal was always to look for fairness across all municipalities in carrying out the goal or the objective of optimizing the road network across the county. Can the councillor just comment on the fairness perspective? I get that there could be some local concerns here, but in terms of creating the motion, what considerations were given to the broad county as a whole in terms of maintaining that fairness and ensuring that it's not just responding to a particular municipality's concerns, which I I think staff have done a pretty good job of when they went to each municipal partner. So questions to the mover and questions to staff. Thank you.
Okay, I think perhaps it might work to call upon the mover first for a response, and then we'll go to staff who can respond appropriately afterwards. So, Councillor Patterson, please go ahead.
Thank you, Warden, and thank you, Councillor Gregg. The amendment was prepared representing all lower tiers, not any particular municipality. When you look at the first one, having a minimum increase of 5% is something every municipality can use when they're budgeting or finance so that they have a stable number every year when budgets are prepared. And the second one, item 2, the transition allocation of 730,783, that's across for all 9 municipalities. And it is to assist with more than just winter maintenance. It covers patrol, maintenance, inspection, traffic operations, and service level costs associated with this transfer. So it's not just specific to one, it's specific to all.
Okay, thank you for that. So then I will then look to staff, and we'll go to the CAO.
Thank you, Warden, and I'll probably start the discussion, and then maybe look to Niall and Garrett for any further details. Staff have reviewed the amended motion, and we feel this would essentially be what we'll call an option B enhanced version. It's somewhere in between option B and option that the task force recommended, and option C that was also presented as part of that workshop and that summary report at the last meeting. We've done an initial review of the finances and as it relates to the recommended option B, and we think that with the delay in the implementation of the current year and what was already included in the 2026 budget, we're fairly close to making version B fit within existing budgets without too much pressure, but we have some further detail to work out with respect to those finances. The amended motion, the option B enhanced version, would place some additional pressure, but it does come close to equating to but it doesn't come close to what I guess would have been the financial pressure as it related to the full version C option. So the proposed adjustment to the 5% minimum inflationary target compared to the 2.5% in the version B financial model, it introduces a little more risk on the county, but again, it's within the realm of what the task force has received and approved to date. It is proposing a minimum that's what we would consider in the middle of version B, which again was at 2.5%, and the version C, which was 7%. So by proposing 5%, somewhere in the middle between those two. In terms of the proposed changes to, and I'll just speak to this as I'm noting, but the proposed changes to the agreement language and the sharing of the data and information. Again, from a staff perspective, we see these as items that would have been implemented anyways. So we have no concerns with respect to introducing that as part of the recommendation, if that's council's direction. But I might look to Niall and or Garrett to see if there's anything further that they can clarify as it relates to Councillor Gregg's specific questions on the financial aspects.
Okay, thank you. So I'll look to either Manager Reid or the Deputy CAO.
Yeah, I can build on that a little bit.
Thank you.
Councillor Gregg's correct that at the beginning there was really those 3 elements: the additional cost of the rurals, the transfer payments, and then the savings from not having to do the urban road construction work on a going forward basis. And then there was $1 million worth of operational savings that were expected to be found. The first 3 of those were all kind of in the $2.1 to $2.2 million range. So I think they kind of started to blur together as we've gone along. But the transfer payments are now larger, which was the original 2.2, then the original 2.1, $2.2 million. Because based on discussions with the lower tiers and some evaluating the actual kilometers, the percentage of the budget that was agreed upon that should be going to the lower tiers, based on the capital savings we would be finding, went up slightly. So it's gone from 10% of the budget to 11 point something of the budget. So that still is a direct offset. So we don't anticipate there being any additional levy required for those transfer payments being larger, because they're offset by the savings for the urbans being downloaded. The one thing that could impact the 2027 budget above the numbers that Randy just shared for the 6.93% is that the $1 million worth of savings may not be fully realized right away, depending on what's decided today. Now, we do have some strategies that we've discussed internally, as far as Pat mentioned, the transfer payments that are in the budget in 2026 will not be needed based on the new proposed transfer dates. So whether we look at transferring those funds into reserve, and then taking them out to offset those additional operating costs that we would incur, depending on what gets discussed today, we think we're pretty close to still being under that 1.2 total cost for the total program that was included in the 2027 proposed budget.
Okay, thank you for those details. With that, then we will move on to Councillor Eccles. Oh, sorry, Councillor Gregg, is there a follow-up?
I did. Thank you for recognizing me. And my other follow-up was, it went off the screen, but I think it's about 730,000 in the decreasing operating funding. Could staff just speak to how that might apply to Owen Sound, being that Owen Sound is somewhat unique to the other municipalities, as we provide a lot of those servicing requirements on a memorandum or a cost. Basically we do it and we invoice the county. So we're a little different. So if staff could just comment on that the second bullet there, the 730,783, as to how that would apply relative to Owen Sound, just to ensure that we're not left out inadvertently or separately because of our current standing.
Okay, so it looks like the Deputy CAO can respond to that.
Thank you, Madam Warden. Yes, so for most member municipalities, that would either constitute them taking on the maintenance and then receiving the decreasing payment in lieu of the county no longer doing the maintenance, or it would be we would continue to do the maintenance and phase in the costs associated to that. It would be up to each municipality how best to do that. In the case of Owen Sound, where you do the maintenance currently and we pay you, it would be a decreasing payment over the term of the contract, the term of the transition, the 5-year transition.
Okay. All right. So with that, then let's move to Councillor Eccles.
Thank you, Madam Warden, and through you, I don't know, Niall or Garrett. In the original version B, there's traffic signal operational funding transition 1 to 5 years, 484,000. In the amendment, it's a 5-year decreasing operation transition. Am I to understand that that is an additional? It's an increase in that operations, or is it that the traffic signal 484,000 is part of that 730,000? So that increase in the operation transition funding is somewhere around 350,000, or is it in addition to? And maybe that's a question more for the Councillor Patterson.
Okay, let me go to the Deputy CAO first, and then I can check in with the mover.
I would be happy to defer to others on this one. I have a very small screen and I'm not able to see who else may have put their hands up, but I believe the intent is that this would be a fully additional operating transitional fund. The way in which we currently do traffic signal operations and the 484,000 or so, which is in the pre-amendment version and indeed the post-amendment version, That 484,000 is a capital line because the traffic signals are a contracted out service. We actually contract through the City of Owen Sound for contract signal maintenance, and so that's a distinctive capital element. The additional operating transitional funds really speak to the other operational elements that the county does, and the number that's been used is 9,200 per kilometre. That absorbs some of the winter maintenance, the winter maintenance costs. So it is over and above the 484,000 is the intent, I believe, of the movers' amendment to the motion.
Okay, and thank you. There weren't any other staff hands up, and I will then go over for a confirmation to the mover. So, Councillor Patterson?
Thank you, Warden. I agree. That was my understanding, that the 484,000 is for the traffic light funding, and again, spread out over the municipalities that have the signalized lights. And the 733,000 is to provide for all the other maintenance, so the winter patrol, the inspections, any insurance, anything to keep the service level at what it is now.
Okay, thank you for that response. There was another hand up, but it is now off. So I'll just put another call out if there are any other hands to go up for discussion. Okay. Okay, so Madam Clerk, I'm not seeing any further hands up for discussion on this amendment to the main motion. So you could remove it from the screen so that we can see all of us. Thank you. And I will now, therefore, using your real hand, please vote in favor. If you are in favor, please raise your hand of the amendment in favor of the amendment to the main motion. All those in favor. Yes, Madam Clerk, that is carried. Okay, thank you. So we are now going to take this enhanced version of B and put it into the main motion. So I'll give the clerk a moment to do that so that we're clear on what we're voting on as the main motion as it's now been amended. Okay, and Madam Clerk, it is, I did originally read out the main motion, and I did, and it was read out as it's been amended, but it is rather lengthy to be showing on the screen. I'm thinking we may need to have it read out to make sure everybody's clear on what they're voting on. But in the meantime, let me make sure that I go through discussion. So we're now discussing the main motion as it's been amended, and I will go to Councillor McQueen.
Yes, thank you, Madam Warden. And just on the main motion as amended, just following up with regards to the budget part of this, I do see that in that report, the Deputy CEO is correct that the effects on the budget won't happen from the Conservation Authority to 2028. But it was mentioned there just a few minutes ago that the savings that may come back in 2027 may not be realized. So obviously those savings will need to be offsetting that extra $2.8 million that's coming in 2028. I guess my point is certainly this needs to go through a budget process, and but I'm just raising those points that there's other pressures through our budget that we will see as well. So that 2.8, with regards to this this 10-year plan, will be certainly affected not only in 2027 but also in 2028 as well. So I just wanted to raise those points. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to Councillor Nielsen next.
Thank you very much, Warden Machsov. I'm at the same place I was when this whole conversation started, and so I'll share my comments now. Somehow or another, we are doing a download to municipalities, and this is like what's being presented today is a fundamental change from what was presented at the beginning of this process. That is increasing the costs to the county. We are then uploading roads. That is increasing costs to the county, while at the same time, every lower tier municipality is upset about the roads that they're getting because of the increased costs they're going to have to endure once this 10-year agreement is over and suddenly the entire road is on our books. I am straight up confused as to how all these roads exist and all the traffic exists now, but we are about to change things and cost the County of Grey almost $40 million to continue to provide traffic services across, while then at the end of the 10 years, all the lower tier municipalities are going to have to increase their levies. I've been lost from the beginning about the cost benefit of this agreement and this price tag for, I just don't see the benefit. I don't see the value for the $40 million we're going to put out. I've been stuck on this for a while. I feel like I'm missing something. Somewhere I'm missing something as to why this actually makes sense. I have questions in my mind, but I'm trying to process the amendment and the difference in costs. And I'm trying to hear from my fellow council members to maybe hear something that then makes this make sense. I just don't see it. We are talking significant increases in the levy to the county for the next 10 years. This amendment changed it so that there's guaranteed 5%. So if the post-election, there's a more conservative county council that comes in that doesn't want to increase the capital levy that high to try and save the county money, we're still going to offset the lower tiers so that there'll be perhaps less money brought in for our own capital needs. Forgive me, I'm lost. I from the beginning I've been lost, and I'm still lost as to how this actually benefits all 9 member municipalities and the county of Grey itself.
Okay, thank you. I'll give an opportunity for staff to come with any response to that. In the meantime, I'm going to go to Councillor Eccles.
Just to comment on the 2.8 million that is going to the from Councillor McQueen. That's going to be spent on the county. It's going to be taken off of the lower tiers who pay it right now. So there's only one taxpayer in this. It's just, who's going to write the check of the taxpayers' money to support this? So we're getting, the break is going to come off of the municipal one, simplistically how I see it anyways, because that's about 2.8 million that the Grey County municipalities are paying conservation authorities now. So instead of it being divvied up as 9 different checks, it's going to be one check that comes from the county. That's about it. The comment on why we're doing this in the rural road rationalization, it's because there is a number of roads in this performance that are county roads, but are being, in Chatsworth and Georgian Bluffs. I call it the Mennonite Corner, and going south down to Grey Road 40, across 15. The amount of traffic that's on that, it is a county road. It meets those standards, and it doesn't meet the standards of a municipal. So to be able to get to that and the safety and the risk that is in that, obviously I've been promoting this. It should have been done 15 years ago. That is the understanding of where this traffic is going. Yeah, the traffic is there, but we can't continue as a lower tier to have that risk. It is a county road. County meets the county criteria. That, Councillor Nielsen, is the biggest option here, or the biggest reason why we're doing this. Yep. And in comparison to the Conservation Authority, it's a shift. Some of this money it's in development charges. So is it really that big of a thing? No. A lot of this money is being transferred out of reserves. It's a bit of a shift. It's not an upload of financial burden towards the county. In the end of it, it'll be basically a wash. That's all I'm going to say about it. That's why I'm supporting it so much.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Eccles. And yes, I appreciate the analogy and using the example of the conservation authorities, but for the purpose of our discussion here, so as not to confuse people following along, we'll try to stick to just this that is in front of us. We'll go to Councillor Kentner next.
Thank you, Warden Matrosovs. I just want to, support Councillor Nielsen in his comments. At the very bottom line, like there's a saving for the county once this is all we get to the end of the 10-year road, a huge saving. I've never heard how many staff we'll be reducing by, or what kind of sales we'll have of snowplows and other equipment. In fact, we're building more shelter for snowplows and equipment. So I'm in the camp that says I haven't really understood the whole basis for this. There is a saving to the county, but I see no evidence of how the county will get that saving. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to Councillor McQueen.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Warden. And the only reason I raised the 2.8 was only for budget process only. I wasn't to get into that whole debate about that part. Just on the sense of roads that are have been considered lower tier roads and are, acting almost as county roads. At the very beginning of this process in the task force, 12B in Grey Highlands was raised that it was a county road. It was downloaded to the municipality and is meeting the criteria of other roads that are being uploaded from municipalities to the county. So there is other areas, and talk about fairness throughout the county. That was a road that was raised at the very beginning of the task force conversation. And it was also raised through our delegation point at the Sydenham school a month or so ago. So there are lots of arguments across this whole discussion, but I just, as a rebuttal to Councillor Eccles, that there's other roads that are meeting the criteria of a county road.
Okay, thank you. Next, we'll go to the Deputy Warden.
Thank you, Madam Warden. And you're right, Councillor McQueen. There are a multitude of other roads that could be included in this process, but it was decided some time ago, and it'd be at least maybe 3 years ago, that we needed to pick a handful of projects and move on with them, get them done, and then would be another tranche of roads potentially that could be used. In response to Councillor Nielsen, the entire intent of this project was that the volume of traffic on a given road should be maintained. That road should be maintained by the appropriate authority. Higher volume roads should be maintained by the county. There's no point in a lower tier trying to maintain a road when it's got a county level of traffic on it. That was the original premise of the project, and I think we're getting at that, but we're getting dragged down, and quite rightly so. We're getting dragged down into the details of how we make that happen, and I'm supportive of what has been proposed here, including the amendment. So I think we need to stop clutching our pearls and say, okay, let's get on with this project and get it done, and then move on to other roads that potentially could be transferred. Thank you, Madam Warden.
Okay, thank you. And I'll circle back then to Councillor Nielsen, who's raised his hand.
Thank you very much, Warden. And just a final comment for myself, and then I won't raise my hand again, I promise. We are talking traffic volumes and what should and shouldn't constitute county roads, and then we're downloading urban centers, which are county roads that go through municipalities. So the one argument kind of defeats itself if we're talking about that, because I'm sure what we're downloading to Hanover as a main trend straight through their significant town and the traffic that goes through there, we're downloading to try to save ourselves money. Where I get lost again is as we sit here with our county hats on, trying to do what's best for Grey County. The original deal that staff put forward and started this process made more sense than what we're putting forward today. The amendment increased the cost to Grey County. The conversations we've had, if we're talking about different ways it could have been done, we're trying to make it fair. We're trying to do as best we can as the county. The county has the authority to download the roads. If we were about trying to line this up It could have been done more efficiently and for less cost to the county. And I've said this before, as I sit with my Grey Highlands hat on, I am in favor of this urban road transfer for Grey Highlands. I believe it benefits Grey Highlands to own and maintain the road of Grey Road 4 and Grey Road 12 through our main corridors, and allows many different reasons why that's beneficial, from parking to speeding to road access, entrance permits, and everything else. It is my Grey County hat that I sit here and don't see the value and the cost. This could have been done in a way that was, even the original staff plan, like I said, was a lesser cost to Grey County. Deputy Warden Milne, your last comment of being dragged into the minutia is what's causing this problem. We're sitting here challenged by which hat we're to be wearing. And in my opinion, the county hat is tilted to the side when it comes to the way we are challenging and moving forward with this. And that is it for me. Thank you very much, Warden Matrosov.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't see any further hands up. I'll just look to the deputy CAO perhaps, or the CAO, both having been involved in consolidating the input that did come from that workshop day. And now that we've seen an amendment to the main motion, so now the main motion looks a little different than it was originally presented to the task force and supported by the task force. So it has now had an enhancement to it, still along the lines of B, not C, not option C, but somewhere in the middle. So can I just look to either the deputy CAO or the CAO to just affirm that this is aligned to what you had been able to ascertain from the workshop day, getting the input from the lower tiers? I'll go to the CAO.
Yeah, thank you, Warden, and through you. I think this is kind of the middle ground, I'd say, of what some of the comments we heard from municipal staff at the workshop, who were more leaning towards, I'd say, some of the version C recommendations and options, and the task force recommendation, obviously version B. And this is somewhere in the middle, as you noted, Warden. So again, when we reviewed the amendment, the proposed amendment internally, we didn't see any immediate concerns. As noted, there's going to be some increased financial pressures as it relates to the operational piece of that amended motion. But we'll work through those details as part of the budget when we bring those budget details forward as a draft to this current council, and obviously for consideration approval for the incoming council. Beyond that, there was nothing in the amended motion or that raises, again, any concerns with respect to staff at this stage. And ultimately, I think staff are looking forward to receiving some clear direction in terms of being able to either move this forward at this stage, so we can start to implement that process and work with the municipalities on finalizing those agreements, and then having that all ready to go if this motion passes for the transfers in June of 2027. Again, we're happy to take any further questions, but we think this is generally in alignment and somewhere in the middle of what we heard based on the comments between municipal staff through those discussions at the workshop.
Okay, thank you. There are no further hands. So Madam Clerk, could you please remove the screen share so that we can see all the hands here? Excellent, thank you. Okay, so it has been amended. We have considered and discussed the main motion as it's been amended. I will call the question. All those in favor? All those in favor, please raise your real hand and keep them up while we count. And that motion is carried. Thank you very much. Okay, now we do still have some discussion items ahead of us on this agenda. So at 12 o'clock, since we only had a 5-minute morning break, I'm going to call our lunch session a lunch break at this point in time. We're going to try to keep it trim because we do have quite a bit left to go through on the agenda item, including closed sessions. So if everyone can be pleased back here and ready to go at 12:30, then we will carry on. So we'll do just a half-hour lunch and then be able to pick up on item 7B when we return. So we will be on lunch break until 12:30. Thank you. Okay. Okay, well, we do have our quorum. There may be one or two others just coming in as we're getting ready to discuss the next item. We're going to be moving on to item 7B, but just on the advice of the clerk, having had a discussion, I'm going to recommend, unless there's any objection to our committee of the whole members, that when we get to item 7E, before we go into 7F, in between 7E and 7F, we'll take a moment to return back to the consent items that were pulled, items 6A, C, and D, just because item 7F is in relation to what we may be discussing in closed matters, and we'll want to go smoothly into that. So at that point in time, we'll take a break from section 7, go back to section 6, and then return to the regular agenda. See no objections. Okay, that allows us to move on to 7B, and this is the minutes, and we will be hearing from the deputy clerk in a moment, but just to get it on the floor, it's recommended that the Grey County Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee minutes dated June 18th, 2026 be adopted as presented, and it contains the 8 resolutions that were provided for, published, and circulated in the agenda. So may I ask for a mover and a seconder? Thank you. I've got that moved by Councillor Gregg and seconded by Councillor Eccles. So it's now on the floor for discussion. So at this point in time, I would like to look to the Deputy Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Warden, and good afternoon, County Council. The Grey County Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee met last Thursday, June 18th via Zoom. To begin, the committee heard a delegation from Kate McConomy from the Canadian National Institute for the Blind, a nonprofit organization that delivers innovative programs and advocacy to individuals impacted by blindness. She noted the importance of understanding sight loss and further provided tips to build and support environments that are barrier-free. Following that delegation, the committee heard from member municipal staff, the Town of Hanover, the Township of Southgate, and the Municipality of Grey Highlands each presented their accessibility plans for the 2026 municipal and school board election. It was noted that election staff would be available to assist throughout the entire election process for members of the public. Additionally, the committee reviewed the 2025 annual accessibility status report from the City of Owen Sound. The summary detailed the progress and measures taken to improve accessibility through the integrated accessibility standards. Furthermore, the committee reviewed the plans for the reconstruction of Toronto Street North and South of Highway 10, located in Markdale, Grey Highlands. The Municipality of Grey Highlands was successful in the Connecting Link grant application, and updates include the replacement of existing storm sewers, a full-depth reconstruction of the road, installation of left turn lanes, and more. Additionally, the committee heard from the City of Owen Sound regarding the rehabilitation of Weavers Creek Boardwalk located in Harrison Park. The boardwalk trail consists of 2 boardwalk sections and 2 gravel pathway sections. The 2 boardwalk sections of the trail are in poor condition, and as a result, the trail is now closed. So at this time, design refinement is underway and included any comments received from the committee. Furthermore, the committee heard from the City of Owen Sound regarding the replacement of the 25-year-old playground and revitalization of the splash pad located at Kelso Beach at Nawash Park. The updates are funded approximately equally by the City of Owen Sound and the Scenic City Order of Good Cheer. Following this, materials from Employment and Social Development Canada were provided to the committee for information. A call for proposals have been made under the Accessible Canada Fund for the National Accessibility Week stream. The funding opportunity would support projects that promote the implementation of the Accessible Canada Act and its regulations through the National Accessibility Week activities. There were also 3 site plan approvals on the agenda from the City of Owen Sound. These included 2795 East Bayshore Road, 2753 15th Street East, and finally 1170 First Avenue East. At the end of the meeting, the committee received an update from county staff on a virtual event that was hosted by the Ministry for Seniors and Accessibility on June 11th. The purpose was to collaborate with other municipal representatives learn about accessible best practices, and share insights. There was a lot of valuable information shared to help support committee membership, as well as a really neat program was shared called Mellies, which is a workplace cafe and marketplace in Whitby. This provides hands-on learning and employment development for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And their website can be found at www.melliesworkplace.ca for those who are interested. Overall, there's great feedback and comment from staff and members of the committee. Staff have indicated that applications for the new committee term would open following the new term of council, and that the terms of reference are to be reviewed and updated this fall. And finally, the final meeting of the Grey County Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee is scheduled for October 15th. That was about all that encompassed the meeting, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
You're
Sorry,
on mute, Madam Warden.
Yeah, it's great. Now Zoom puts a little flag across and says, hey, I think you're trying to talk, but you better unmute. So thank you. Yes, with that, any questions from any members of the committee of the whole? If you want to use your virtual hand. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands go up for any questions. So in that case, then I will call the vote. All those in favor of the motion that's on the floor? And I see that as carried, Madam Clerk. Okay, thank you very much. And with that, we'll move on to the recommendation for 7C, that the Agricultural Advisory Committee meeting minutes dated June 18th, 2026 be adopted as presented. May I ask for a mover and a seconder there? Got it moved by Councillor Patterson, seconded by Councillor Mackey. So it's now on the floor for discussion, and I would like to look to Director Taylor.
Great. Thank you, Madam Warden. So we had another exciting meeting of the Agricultural Advisory Committee. The meeting kicked off with an introduction from Linda Scott Swanston and a presentation from Emily McKaig about the 2026 Grey Experimental Acres Program. Ms. McKaig noted that we had 7 projects that have been approved for funding in 2026, and they represent a broad range of agriculture from across the county. So this was really just sort of the kickoff and to explain what the projects are, but we'll be hearing a report back probably later this year or very early next year on the success and the findings from these projects. So definitely encourage people to look into that further. We also had an update on Council's direction on the beaver and coyote bylaw. I won't belabor this any further, but Council's well aware of the direction there, and the committee were glad to receive an update. We then also had an update on what we call the RALD site, the Regional Agricultural Learning and Demonstration Site. This is the property immediately to the west of Grey Roots and Morston Heritage Village. As Council may recall, the county had submitted a Niagara Escarpment Plan Amendment application on behalf of the 2 agricultural societies to look at a future fall fair site there, amongst many other things. And the site would provide great synergy between promoting learning about both past and current farm practices and the various programming we have going on at Grey Roots and Morston. And so the update in this regard is that we've been in touch with Niagara Escarpment Commission staff. They're hoping that they will have a final recommendation on the plan amendment to the commission in August of 2026. But given their workloads and other things that could arise, that those dates are subject to change. But I know the ag societies and this council are all eager to figure out the next steps on that project should council or should the Niagara Escarpment Commission end up approving the Niagara Escarpment Plan Amendment there. We then had an update from Kalina Stanford in our Economic Development, Tourism and Culture Department with respect to some exciting news to our west and the plowing match in Bruce County. Ms. Stanford noted that we will be looking to coordinate a joint booth at the International Plowing Match and certainly welcome everybody to attend. And it's always a big event, and it's particularly exciting when we have it this close to our backyard in that regard. And Councillor McQueen also noted that the Grey Federation of Agriculture is also coordinating various volunteer positions for the event. So that's great as well. We then had an update from Jill Patterson at Grey Roots, who summarized the new wild weather and climate action exhibit that's currently going on in Grey Roots. She highlighted the strong focus and reality of weather and climate on the farming community, and some members of council may recall that at an earlier Agricultural Advisory Committee meeting, we had reached out to the committee members for any weather records they might have or anecdotes they might have about their experience, in some cases farming for many generations in Grey, and about the changes in weather and climate in that regard. And we did have at least one member say he'd already visited the exhibit because some of his records were included in that. So that was kind of a nice full circle moment, and certainly encourage anyone listening or members of council to visit Grey Roots, because they have this really neat exhibit going on. Ms. Patterson also noted that they'll have a display on site at the International Plowing Match as well. So lots of learning there as well. We then got to the roundtable or sector trends update section of the meeting. Councillor McQueen raised concerns related to cases of screwworm that have been found in beef cattle in Texas, and knock on wood, so far not here yet, but noted some of the potential impacts should this make its way further north in that regard. We also had a good discussion on fire safety and the importance of making sure that our fire departments and volunteer fire departments are educated with respect to agricultural practices and how we could better work together. So we flagged this as potential discussion for a further meeting in that regard. With that, the warden thanked the committee because this was the last meeting of this term of council. It's, for those that sit on the committee or have been able to participate, it's a wonderful committee. You always walk away learning lots. So she thanked the committee members for their dedication and noted that we'd look for a call for members in the new term of council. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Madam Warden. If there's any questions, I'm certainly happy to take any.
Excellent. Thank you. So we'll put it out to any committee of the whole members with any questions. No. Yes, there. Councillor McKay, go ahead. You just had it there and then it went back to mute again.
Okay, how about now?
There you go.
Anyway, I'd just like to, it isn't a question, it's just it's about time with Grey Roots and the Niagara Escarpment. A couple of volunteers that have been working on this for a long time, Everett Hall and Henry Feenstra. They seem to be asking me all the time about, have you heard anything? Have you heard anything? So now I'll be able to report back to them, hopefully sometime in August, that we'll get some response from the Niagara Escarpment. So good news. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And I don't see any further hands then, so I'll call the question. All those in favor, please use your real hand. Thank you. And that motion is carried, Madam Clerk. That allows us to move on to item 7D. It's recommended that report CAOR CW 1926 regarding the Regional Conservation Authority updates be received, and that staff be directed to include $2.8 million in the draft 2028 budget as an allowance for the Regional Conservation Authority levies. So with that, before we go to the Deputy CAO, I'll look for a mover. Thank you. It's moved by Councillor Dobreen, seconded by Councillor Dickert. It's now on the floor for discussion. And with that, I will go to the Deputy CAO.
Good afternoon, Madam Warden. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, members of council. I believe Rayburn has got some slides that she'll be putting up. I'll just go through a quick slide deck. We appreciate that with budget just around the corner and a number of media stories being out there, that this continues to be an issue on many councils' desks, both at an upper tier and a lower tier level. And so given that staff were provided a little bit of an update from some of our area conservation authorities recently, thought we would share perspectives from the county perspective and how at this point in time we're proposing to budget for this, include this in our budget process. So next slide, please. This is a quick update based on some information that we've been shared. I believe that several members of County Council will have received this information through their participation on various different Conservation Authority boards over the last few weeks, and seeking support from Council to include $2.8 million as part of the 2028 budget process, through the 2027 budget process, for the 2028 budget, to accommodate the uploading of Conservation Authority, the new Regional Conservation Authority levies, to the County Council level. Next slide, please. So just as a very quick bit of background to how we got to where we're at. So Bill 68 is what started this all off. It was introduced in late 2025, and it introduced the platform for some fairly sweeping changes to conservation authorities. There's 36 conservation authorities currently operating in Ontario, and 4 provide services within the boundary of Grey County at this point in time. The province has proposed to merge the 36 initially into 7 larger regional conservation authorities. And that proposal garnered more than 14,000 comments through the Environmental Registry posting before receiving royal assent as part of Bill 97, which came into force earlier this year. So effective earlier this year, in April of this year, the transition of the 36 conservation authorities into now 9 regional conservation authorities has started. The Ontario Provincial Conservation Agency has been formed, and members have been appointed to its board on a transitional basis. And there's a number of pieces of transitional work which we'll touch on in a couple of slides' time. Some of the comments we made, next slide please, were taken into account. So if you remember, we just went through 2 maps there. The 2 maps were the previous layout for, there we go. Those 2 maps show the previous layouts of the conservation authorities, the regional conservation authorities. Of note here, in the map on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see that Thunder Bay was included in the what was called then the Huron Lake Superior Regional Conservation Authority. That has changed. And in the map on the left-hand side, the Lake Erie Regional Conservation Authority has actually been split into 2. And on the next slide, this map shows the current layout of the now 9 Regional Conservation Authorities, or RCAs, across the province. So you'll see there the orange and the blue of what was the Lake Erie as a single conservation authority has now been split into 2. And the green now no longer includes Thunder Bay and is referred to as the Huron Lake Huron Regional Conservation Authority. So some of the changes that this council specifically highlighted have been made. These are still, however, quite large bodies, and there are many questions that I suspect remain unanswered. Next slide, please. One of these next 2 slides are taken directly from presentations that have been provided to conservation authorities and transition committees over recent weeks, and they lay out the timetables associated with the transition from the existing 36 conservation authorities to the new regional conservation authorities. It's important to note that they have pegged the municipal election date and the transition date. The transition date is February 2027. We're advised that that is still very much the target. However, in some of the conversations, there is a recognition of the amount of work that needs to occur before that date, and some openness, we understand, at the provincial level to consider changes to that if it's necessary. However, at this point in time, we are looking to that transition date in 2027. Prior to transition, the existing 36 conservation authorities have been asked to prepare their 2027 budgets. Those budgets are anticipated to be approved by the boards of the existing 36 conservation authorities prior to the municipal elections in October of 2026. So that means that the existing 36 conservation authorities will have established their budgets and approved those budgets by their boards prior to the county council, and indeed many member municipalities seeing their 2027 budget. So there will be a budget impact arranged by the conservation authorities pre-municipal budget conversations. For those 36 conservation authorities, their boards will continue to function into 2027. And so that means for some, where the board term is tied to member municipal councillors being elected, there will be a short window where member municipalities will have to nominate new members of council to sit on the boards between the election and the transition to the new regional conservation authority model. For some of the conservation authorities within Grey County, the appointments will continue regardless of the outcome of the municipal elections, and so they won't necessarily need to swear in a new board before transitioning to the new regional conservation authority model. We can go to the next slide, please. This really shows a little bit more detail and around which levels of government and organization are undertaking which steps of the process. So MECP as the ministry that oversees the conservation authorities as they exist today, and will continue to oversee the new regional conservation authorities once they are brought into place. The OPCA or OPCA, the Ontario Provincial Conservation Agency, that is the governing body which is laying out the transition plans and has established the transitional committees. And indeed, it's OPCA who will be appointing 9 project executives to the 9 new regional conservation authorities. Those project executives, we understand, will become the new CAOs of the regional conservation authorities after transition. The transition committees are a temporary feature. They are currently formed of a member of the board and a member of senior staff of all 36 conservation authorities coming together in their new regional conservation authority areas to plan for the transition. They will be developing the transition plans, and those transition committees will dissolve at the time of the formation of the new regional conservation authorities. There are, of course, the conservation authorities, both existing and the new ones, that have got a key part to play in the transition. And municipalities. And so the municipalities who have relationships with regional conservation authorities, some of those will be new. In some places, upper tier municipalities have appointed members to conservation authorities historically. For some, such as in Grey County, that will be a new function that we will be tackling in 2027. Next slide, please. One of the things that did come about through some of the changes post the ERO posting was the inclusion of watershed councils. We understand that this was done largely in response to some of the concerns that had been raised through the comments back to the province around local representation and local voice, local governance within these large regional conservation authority areas. So each RCA must appoint at least one watershed council. We understand that there is no upper limit on how many watershed councils that can be introduced. And so one regional conservation authority may have multiple watershed councils appointed. The details around watershed councils are somewhat scarce at this point in time, but the province has indicated that their role will be to advise on local watershed priorities. They will be ensuring that there is a local voice, so there will still be scope for local elected representation on these, as well as Indigenous community voices, agricultural voices, and citizen voices. They will provide a structure for those local voices to identify local conservation priorities aligned with the mandates of the regional conservation authorities. They will enable that broader representation that stretches beyond elected representation into other community groups. And they will support the decision-making priority setting of the larger regional conservation authority boards. So the regional conservation authority boards will obviously be fairly significant, but will have fairly limited local representation. Our understanding is these watershed councils should allow for a tiered approach of representation within that governance structure, and indeed may actually continue to reflect some of the existing boundaries within which conservation authorities operate. It's anticipated watershed councils will take some time to form after transition, and so probably going to see some more details around what these might look like as we get later into 2026 and into 2027 after transition. Next slide, please. So if we look at some of the anticipated impacts that we're seeing at the minute is we are now on this new journey. We are moving towards regional conservation authorities and away from the 36 conservation authorities. That process has started. However, the functions of conservation authorities and the Conservation Authority Act remains as is. So Schedule 1, 2, and 3 services and the agreement services that conservation authorities provide, they will continue to provide under the new Regional Conservation Authority model. Similarly, source water protection continues to be a core element within regional conservation authorities and is a core mandated element of the RCAs going forward, and there are no changes to the Source Protection Act at this point in time. The transition has started. OPCA has been formed and there are appointed board members to OPCA on a transitional basis, and the 36 conservation authorities, as I say, have started forming transitional committees. The project executives are being appointed and anticipate that they will be appointed through the balance of summer, so that there will be a new leadership in each one of the 9 regional conservation authorities. Initially, that project executive will report to OPCA, but on the transition to the new regional conservation authority boards will assume the role of CAO reporting to their boards. As noted, member municipalities will be working with existing conservation authority boards to establish budgets, and Grey County will be asked to appoint members to a board we anticipate fairly early in 2027. The existing budgets of the conservation authorities amalgamated will form the first year's budget of the Regional Conservation Authority. So the RCA's budget for 2027 is anticipated to be an amalgamation of the portions of the conservation authorities that are in its area, their budgets for 2027. So by February of 2027, they'll be 2 months in. The balance of the 10 months of their approved budgets will form the 10 months of the first year of the Regional Conservation Authority budget. Effective from 2028 for Grey County, we will assume the responsibilities of both appointing board members and meeting the budget needs of our new 2 regional conservation authorities. Next slide, please. This one talks a little bit about some of the budget impacts. So at this point in time, details are very sparse on what the Regional Conservation Authority budget might look like in 2028. Indeed, the body hasn't even formed yet, so it would be somewhat hard to anticipate what its budget might be. So staff, just recognizing that we have a 2-year budget process, we give you a fairly detailed budget for 2027 and our best guess at what 2028 might bring over coming months. And so in order to try and do that, we've had a look around what our member municipalities currently pay for the services of conservation authorities at this point in time. Looking through your budgets, that's somewhere in the region of $2.5 to $2.7 million. And so if we apply a little bit of inflation to that, we're anticipating that, and assuming that the Regional Conservation Authority budget remains broadly a reflective budget of the amalgamation of its member municipal budgets, its member Conservation Authority budget, we're anticipating a budget impact of about $2.8 million in 2028. That is a heavily caveated number. Conservation authorities' budgets are done on a weighted basis on assessment. And so the assessment, the nature of assessment in the new Regional Conservation Authority area is very significantly different from anything we see in Grey County or indeed Bruce County at this point in time. There are very significant population bases that are influenced by GTA pricing that will be part of the Regional Conservation Authority. Remember, one of our 2 authorities will stretch to King City and up the 400 series corridor through the communities of Newmarket and into the south end of Lake Simcoe. And so that's a very, very different, much more urbanized environment with much higher population and a very different assessed value of property than exists in Grey County. And so whilst 2.8 million is a reasonably fair guess for what our current costs for conservation authorities could be going forward, We have no idea, A, what the Regional Conservation Authority budget could be in 2028, or how that will weight out across participating member municipalities in 2028. So whilst this is a placeholder number, it could be significantly too much, it could be significantly too little. We really have very little clarity on what that ultimate number would be, but we do know it will be a significant number, and so staff feel it is prudent that even if we have some significant uncertainty around what that number should be, it is worth us putting it in the budget as a placeholder at this point in time. Next slide, please. And with that, I leave you with the recommendation. It is just a receipt for information and then the direction for adding in the 2.8 million, which I hope I have suitably and adequately caveated for 2028, so that we have some direction to come back to through the budget process. And I'd be more than happy to take any questions that any members might have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think the motion is relatively straightforward in its wording, so we've cleared the screen so we can go to discussion. So we will start with Councillor Dobreen.
Thank you, Warden, and thank you, Deputy CAO. The question may be for you if you are sitting at that transition table, or perhaps to our members who may be sitting as chairs of their respective conservation authorities. In regard to budgeting, one of your slides indicated that the municipalities will continue to be responsible for developing and paying developing the 2027 budget. In the past, the province has, about 9 years ago, slashed the provincial contribution by 50%. They currently contribute less than 3% to the CA budget. And I wondered if at the transition table there is discussion. Do we know? Is there any input from the province as to their contribution to this newly formed RCAs? And how are they going to help fund this new initiative? I'll caveat that with the, I guess I can fashion it, just trying to lower my hand, but we'll disregard it then. Trying to relate it to the Grey Bruce OPP Detachment Board that was thrust upon municipalities, where it is now joint, and there's zero provincial contribution to support our First Nations or the provincial appointees or the community appointees. So our cost through that board in itself has almost tripled by 2027. My concern is that this new regional conservation authority may escalate with less and less provincial contribution. And so my question to you, or to the chairs that sit at the Conservation Authority, has there been discussion, or are you continuing to advocate to the province that they need to pay their share? Thank you. Long-winded, but got my point across.
Okay, thank you. So we'll begin with the Deputy CAO, and in the meantime, any other members can put up their hand in response. Go ahead, Deputy CAO.
Thank you very much, Warden. Thank you for the question, Councillor Dobreen. The first point I think is worth highlighting is Grey County is currently not a member of a transitional committee. That is actually a point that was taken with some degree of surprise. We, as a receiving agent of regional conservation authorities, not having a seat at the transition table means we're a step removed from this process at this point in time. That has been passed back, and so hopefully we may be invited to that table at some point in the future, which means we don't have this information somewhat secondhand. OPCA has, and there was a recent announcement of this, but it was actually released earlier on in the spring. OPCA have transitional funding of $3 million of provincial funds. So the initial costs associated with the Ontario Provincial Conservation Agency are being funded and are not going to be passed on to existing conservation authorities. And so probably won't form that first round of regional conservation authority budgets. However, the legislation does indicate that the costs of OPCA will become a levy-funded process. At this point in time, there has been no announcement of additional provincial dollars, and so similar to your experience, the conservation authorities as they stand today have seen decreasing amounts of money associated to mandated activities over the years. It is unlikely that it is unlikely at this point that that will change, as the basis of the new regional conservation authority budgets will be the budgets that are passed by the 36. Having said that, through some of the conversations that we are aware of going on, and again, secondhand information to some extent, some of the things that we have heard are that the watershed councils might be able to influence budgets and may be able to meet provincial mandated targets. And so there may be money associated with some of the priorities associated with some of the watershed councils. The other thing that has been indicated to us through some of the conversations we've had is that there may be more provincial dollars that are available around some of the fixed assets that conservation authorities manage, such as the water control structures and so on and so forth. However, at this point in time, there are no additional provincial dollars that have been identified to support conservation authorities, which means there are no additional dollars being set aside to support the new regional conservation authorities. So at this point in time, I think from the position that we sit in, and again, secondhand information, I can offer no assurance that there is further provincial funding flowing into the conservation authority world at this point in time. And so the budget impact in 2028 to Grey County will be fully at the power of the new board of the Regional Conservation Authority to set, on which Grey County will probably only get one seat of maybe 14 or 15 seats that are available.
Okay. Thank you very much. Follow-up from Councillor DeBreen.
Thank you for that. To me, it sounds more and more like another provincial download, and our residents need to be aware that the increase burden on property taxpayers continues, and I'm very concerned that the county did not have a seat at that transition table. So thank you for that clarification.
Okay. And I don't see any further hands up. So in that case, then it looks like we're ready to call a vote. All those in favor, please raise your real hand. Okay, and that motion is carried, Madam Clerk. Okay, thank you very much. And we will now move on to item 7E, and it is recommended that report CAOR CW 2026 regarding the renewal of property lease for the ROMP medical student residence be received, and that staff be directed to enter into an updated memorandum of agreement with ROMP and the City of Owen Sound, outlining responsibilities of each party for accommodation for medical residents at the property in Owen Sound, subject to ROMP supporting the continued leased funding and Owen Sound supporting the renewed lease, and that staff be directed to prepare an updated lease agreement continuing to name the County of Grey as a tenant for signature by the warden and clerk, and that staff proceed prior to council approval as per section 26.6B of the procedural bylaw 513422. All right, may I ask for a mover and a seconder, please? To get it on the floor, thank you. It's moved by Councillor Kentner, seconded by Councillor Nielsen. So it's now on the floor for discussion, and I'll look to the CAO. This is an ongoing situation that we've had, and this is to continue it. So over to you, CAO.
Thank you, Warden. Council will recall that in 2024, the county did partner with the Rural Ontario Medical Program, also known as ROMP, and the City of Owen Sound to lease a residence for medical students that are coming to train and work in the area. ROMP covers the lease costs, and the city helps with things like the internet, garbage bag tags, winter maintenance, as well as extra parking if required. The county looks after the lawn maintenance, which costs have ranged from anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000 per year. The current lease ends at the end of August 2026, and we need to decide by the end of this month whether to renew or end the current arrangement. Bright Shores has told us the residence is being used quite regularly, so the program has been very successful. In the past, what we've heard is that not having a place for medical students to stay when they're here as learners attached to the hospitals makes it harder for them to come to this area. This arrangement has helped to remove that barrier. In fact, over the last 2 years, 49 different medical students have stayed at this residence, ranging from stays from about a month to 4 months in length. ROMP is willing to continue funding the lease, and they verbally committed to that, and the landlord is also open to renewing the lease. Given the success, the recommendation is to renew the agreement for another 2 years, subject to ROMP and the city agreeing to renew the lease. And happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you. And certainly when they have exposure to our area, they may potentially decide that this is an area where they want to set up practice.
Agreed.
With that, any questions or comments? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands go up, and we are familiar with this arrangement from earlier years. So I'll call the question then. All those in favor? And that motion is carried, Madam Clerk. Okay, thank you. So what we'll do at this point in time before we go to our final item in number 7 is we will go back to the items that were pulled from the consent agenda. We have items 6B, C, and D to look at. So item 6B, the recommendation is that the Grey Bruce Primary Care and Health System update from Grey Bruce Ontario Health Team be received for information. May I ask for a mover and a seconder? Thank you. Got a move by Councillor Gregg, seconded by Councillor Carleton. It's now on the floor for discussion, and I believe Councillor Gregg, was it you who had pulled it, I think? Yes, so please go ahead.
That is correct, and great segue into my question here with the last report. Just wondering from staff how they take correspondence like this and integrate it into future reporting back to council regarding ongoing physician recruitment efforts and the need in the community. In terms of just keeping us up to date.
Okay. CEO, did you want to address that? Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Warden, and thank you for the question, Councillor Gregg. With respect to Grey Bruce OHT, I'll start by just noting that Lindsay Johnston, the Executive Director for Grey Bruce OHT, will be appearing as a delegation at the July 23rd Committee of the Whole meeting. So no doubt she'll be able to provide some further details on the work of the Grey Bruce OHT and be able to provide especially the details that were attached to the agenda. Grey Bruce OHT sent those documents out to all the municipalities in the region and asked for us to bring those forward to our respective councils. But having Lindsay coming next month, we'll be able to hear more information from her for sure. And council can ask any further questions from Lindsay with respect to the ongoing work for Grey Bruce OHT. With respect to that ongoing work, as recommended by the Joint Missile Services Committee and supported by council, county staff continue to be engaged actively in the work of the Grey Bruce OHT and to support that work to align healthcare recruitments efforts across the region, as well as to assist in identifying any community needs, also looking at from a regional perspective, and providing this information to Lindsay and her team through Grey Bruce OHT. That information is obviously being used with respect to continuing to secure some of the funding through the IPCT funding that the province has put forward to around the overall goal of attaching as many unattached residents to a healthcare provider by 2029. But as noted, Lindsay will be able to provide more details on the work of the OHT next month and to help answer any questions. But we continue to work with Lindsay and her team to be able to support and assist wherever we can through the work of OHT.
Okay, thank you. So it'll be good to see her here in person. All right, so seeing no further hands then, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that motion is carried, Madam Clerk. We will move on to item 6C then. It's recommended that report PDRCW 2526 be received, and that all written and oral submissions for official plan amendment 30 were considered and helped to make an informed recommendation and decision, and that the proposed county official plan amendment 30 to add a site-specific policy exemption permitting a surplus farm dwelling severance on part lot 13, concession 14 west in the geographic township of Normanby, municipality of West Grey be approved, and that a bylaw to adopt the county official plan amendment 30 be prepared for consideration by county council. May I ask for a mover and a seconder? Thank you. I've got a move by Councillor Keaveney, seconded by Councillor Mackey and Councillor Eccles. You had pulled this. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Madam Warden, and through you to probably Director Taylor. In the report and whatnot, which is done many times, something that I find just an anomaly. I don't think I've seen it before, but if there's anything going to be done on the properties and whatnot, there's going to be a request that a hold be put on and nothing be developed until there's an archaeological study. And as a request from a commenting agency, I'm just baffled how or why we have that in there. I've just never quite seen that before in any of these surplus farm dwellings, but even in severances across the county that we have in rural severances. We're going to put a hold on it, nothing to be developed until we do archaeological studies. The ramifications of this are outstanding, just unbelievable in my mind to the continued development or enjoyment of private property. Does Mr. Taylor want to make a comment on why this request is in here at this point in time?
I'm actually going to direct your question to Planner Dillman.
Okay. If she's available.
Yes, she is here on standby, ready to go.
I am. Thank you very much, and through you to Councillor Eccles. We do circulate all Planning Act applications to all of the agencies and public bodies in the Planning Act. And as this was a joint circulation for both the zoning bylaw amendment and the official plan, the comments come to both of us, so both to the county and to West Grey. So I can just sort of a little bit of background there. As one of those comments that were received from SON, from their environmental office, was a request to add that holding provision on the retained lands. So those lands will be rezoned to prohibit the residential development, as is typical in all of the surplus farm dwelling severances. And should West Grey Council wish to include the holding provision for the archaeological assessment, that would be a decision that West Grey Council could entertain there. If Director Scott Taylor there, if you would like to add anything further there.
Okay, so we'll go to
Director. Okay.
Yep, thank you. We'll go to Director Taylor then.
Through you, Madam Warden, I think Cassandra's done a great job. Council may be aware that, for many years on larger development applications like a subdivision or a gravel pit or quarry, we've seen an archaeological assessment as a regular requirement up front. So before the matter ever comes to council, we see that archaeological assessment. What's been happening more and more is we're seeing more and more requests from our First Nations and Métis communities to have these properties assessed even on the what we'll call the smaller development applications like a severance. I know in the county providing planning services in the township of Chatsworth, this has come up on a number of severances and other applications. We've talked to colleagues in Bruce and Simcoe, and they're seeing it more and more even on minor variance applications. As Cassandra has noted, the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation staff have put forward this request. Ultimately, it is the comment from them, and it's up to council either at this table or municipal table as to what they do with any comment from a First Nation or a member of the public or an agency. Staff, have been trying to work with First Nations and Métis communities to establish protocols on how we communicate and how we process development applications. One of the things that we've got ongoing right now is still the archaeological management plan. And one of the hopes through that plan, other than the mapping that has been previewed for council, is we'll start to work through some policies and procedures to better understand where such requirements for an archaeological assessment might be required and where they could be waived. Realize that, based on past practice, this is starting to come as a bit of a shock to landowners and committees of adjustment and councils with respect to seeing them on these smaller applications. But the First Nations and Métis communities have noted that in some cases, even these smaller applications, you could find significant cultural artifacts, and it's their request that counties and municipalities consider more of these assessments. In this stage, the official plan amendment that Cassandra has before council is flagging that as a comment. Obviously, the county has no ability to attach a holding. So it's not on the official plan amendment, but based on the fact that we do show the comments from all public bodies and agencies, we did feel it important to include in the report. So turn it back to you, Madam Warden, but certainly happy to work with Cassandra to answer any further questions if there are any.
Okay, any follow-up, Councillor Eccles?
So just my interpretation of those statements, then it's back whether the lower tier wants to put it on. Is there going to be, so it is our right and under regulation of how we handle it. The county is certainly not in a position to challenge anything on the zoning that the lower tier puts in place on these properties. As it is already, there is no development left on the remnant parcel or no development allowed, and I think everybody understands that. So the redundancy of putting a holding symbol on it is just a bureaucratic configuration, and so it is just for the lower tier, and if we choose not to, there will, how we go about it, we will not be hindered anyway from the county on approval of that.
Go ahead, Director Taylor.
Through you, Madam Warden, I'll maybe take a first shot at this, and if Cassandra has anything further to add, she can certainly add something. So just to your point, Councillor Eccles, just to clarify for the rest of council as well. So when we do a surplus farm dwelling severance, there can be no new residential development on the remnant farm parcel. In theory, one can still have farm development, so to speak. You could still build drive sheds or barns or anything else. And I think that's where the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation comment is coming from. If there are to be further buildings on that property, then their request is for an archaeological assessment. With respect to your comments about the zoning bylaw amendment and the county's role there, yeah, it is obviously West Grey Council that makes the decision there. Cassandra's worked very closely with your planner, Matt Rapke, on this one in processing the application in tandem. Matt is aware of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation's request. Ultimately, he'll make his professional planning recommendation to West Grey Council. But it's not necessarily, I'm trying to think of how to word this. It's not necessarily the county that would take further action here. But there could be questions from either members of the public or Saugeen Ojibwe Nation staff as to, how West Grey Council may have reached that decision. We would obviously defer to Matt and West Grey staff on that piece. I don't know if that answers your question, but happy to hear anything further if there is any.
Okay, can I move on then, Councillor Eccles, to other hands, or did you have a
Yes.
follow-up to that? Okay, thank you.
No, please, go ahead.
Okay, we'll go to Councillor McQueen.
Thank you, Madam Warden, and thank you, Councillor Eccles, for bringing this up. To me, this is a slippery slope. So does that mean then the next stage would be, because it's going through a process and you're taking the surplus farm buildings away, the land's going to remain probably in the same production or operation as it is today. But does that mean then when an agricultural operator decides to build a building, is that going to require an archaeological study? I mean, where does this stop? You know, and again, Grey County is our number one economic driver here in Grey County. And I think I do take, you know, the ability to go out for comments. I understand that, but it just, to me, this is way going down a rabbit hole. I can see where you would make, you know, currently if there was an aggregate operation and you're removing soil, transferring soil, a consortium or a subdivision where you're moving soil, but this is continuing on the same, however. And so I raise the point that the slippery slope is when an agricultural operation decides to build a building, is this going to be the next step? And I'm really concerned about that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Director Taylor, I'll go to you before I go down, and we do want to stay focused on what we are considering here at the county table. Director Taylor, having explained the details about what happens at our lower tier tables and our response to those comments. So with that in mind, Director Taylor?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Warden, and through you to Councillor McQueen. Currently, archaeological requirements are only triggered when there's a Planning Act application. And so for a standard farm or residential property across the property, if they're already zoned and designated, then there's no trigger for those applications. But if they do submit a planning application, there is the possibility that a county or municipality could require such an assessment up front as part of a complete application or as part of a conditional approval if they saw fit. You know, your comments are well taken with respect to, you know, making sure that farmers and business owners can still, you know, use the land for productive purposes. And this is really one of those matters that we're trying to come to some further clarity on through that archaeological management plan. And you know, that won't be back before this council before the end of term, but it's something we certainly hope to explore early-ish in the new term of council and as part of the county's official plan review into next year. But I'm wary that I'm straying from the current discussion, so I'll just keep my remarks to that.
Thank you. Okay, follow up to Councillor McQueen, and then we'll move on.
So I guess in summary is, yes, this has triggered that process. And the whole part of having a policy that allows the surplus farm dwellings to be taken away from an agricultural and maintained, there could be the circumstance, because this becomes more process driven. There could be other option is the purchaser, the farmer, or whoever's buying that lands may choose not to go down this road because of this and may just demolish the building, and then you lose that farmhouse. So I think there's a fine balance here that needs to be followed, not just my comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to Councillor Mackey.
Thanks, Warden. I just wanted to, Scott had mentioned that Grey County has been providing planning services for Chatsworth. We've had a number of these applications, Councillor Eccles, come forward, and our council has not added the holding provision to either the severed portion or the retained portion. So my question to Scott is, when the lower tier makes that decision, is there an opportunity to be appealed? Like, is there any appeal mechanism if we don't add a holding symbol?
Director Taylor?
Through you, Madam Warden. Thank you for your question, Councillor Mackey. Sorry, I'm stumbling here. You know, obviously I have to stray away from offering anything that could be construed as legal advice because I'm clearly not qualified. With respect to where the Planning Act has gone over the past couple years, the province has severely limited where a third party can appeal and where they can't. So to answer your question, it would really come down to the type of application that's being applied for and whether or not a First Nation had participated in the process and submitted comments in that regard. So I don't want to go too much deeper than that. And I apologize. I'm not trying to be evasive here. But there are certain applications, simply put, that can be appealed, and there's others that can't. To my knowledge, we haven't seen one of these appealed across the county yet. But you know, there is the chance that at some point a matter such as this could be escalated, whether it's an appeal or further discussions in that regard.
Okay, thank you. All right, seeing no further hands on the motion that we have in front of us, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that motion is carried, Madam Clerk. And the other item that was pulled from the consent agenda is item 6D. It's recommended that report PDR CW 2626 regarding an overview of the County Official Plan Amendment 31 on lands described as Concession 1 SWTSR South Part Lot 236, Part Lot 237, Registered Plan 17R1178, Part 2, Geographic Township of Proton, which is now in the Township of Southgate, municipality known as 772082, Highway 10, which would have the effect of redesignating the subject lands from rural, provincially significant wetlands and hazard lands to primary settlement area. Provincially significant wetlands and hazard lands be received for information. May I ask for a mover and a seconder? Thank you. Moved by the Deputy Warden, seconded by Councillor Nielsen. It's on the floor for discussion, and Councillor Gregg, you had pulled that.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity just to ask a question on this one. Just noting that just a week or last meeting, we'd had a conversation about going green and gray and future endeavors. When I looked at this and I had the map in front of me, my question to staff, I guess, is the rectangular block to the northwest of the parcel in the report in question, it has a little bit more hazard and PSW zone mapping than the current OPA 31 in question. Can any action, or is it possible that any action, when you're kind of leapfrogging that parcel with development, can it undermine protections which should be in place for that parcel of land to the north of it?
Okay, and for that, I have Director Taylor on deck.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Warden, and through you to Councillor Gregg. I might just share my screen here so that we're all, looking at the same map, just to further explain my answer. Can someone just confirm that they can see that map that's up on the screen now?
Yes, we can.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
So what we have before us is the primary settlement area of Dundalk, and the lands in question subject to this OPA are sort of circled in this dashed black line. And so the red is the primary settlement area, the green is the hazard lands, and the blue is the provincially significant wetlands. And so just taking a step back a few years, when the province approved minister's zoning orders a few years ago, they had the effect of adding these lands over here to the south to the primary settlement area of Dundalk. Southgate has long had plans for what they call an industrial park bypass road. So this would be an extension of Eco Parkway out to the provincial highway and through into their business park. And so these would be on these southerly lands, and then lands sort of on either side of the Eco Parkway could be developed. What happened when the province, made this minister's zoning order is that it created what we're calling sort of this donut hole with these two rural properties. And so you've got settlement area to the north and settlement area to the west and to the south, and then Dufferin County and Millington across the provincial highway there. But you had these two, if you like, leftover properties in rural. The one has now come forward with an official plan amendment. We're still at the beginning of the process, but it's both to the township and the county to redesignate. The property to the north here, which is not subject to this, does, as Councillor Gregg has noted, have additional provincially significant wetlands, some hazard lands, and if you were to look at the air photo, which is just up here, you'll see it's much more heavily treed than the subject lands in that regard. So if development were to proceed on either of these properties, or urban style development were to proceed on either of these properties, there's a number of steps that would need to be taken. First and foremost, the land subject to the amendment today would need to be added to the settlement area. That needs to get done at the municipal or the township and county levels. There's a number of studies that are required for that, including an environmental impact study, an archaeological study, engineering, planning, everything else. And then if those lands were to get added, then most likely there would be a plan of subdivision or a plan of condominium application that would be to follow. And so part of those applications would look at the environmental impacts on the subject lands, but also on the neighboring lands. As with any planning application, the one other thing that would be looked at is, do we have those boundaries correct? So if we're zooming back in on here, are those provincially significant wetlands and hazard lands properly mapped on the landscape? Because sometimes we do have errors there. And so if these lands were to be redesignated and redeveloped, then this would become sort of the sole property subject to the donut hole, if you will, and at some point in the future, this landowner might choose to come forward with a further amendment. But simply put, the redesignation of these lands doesn't directly impact the provincially significant wetlands or the hazard lands on the neighboring property. But no doubt it could have the effect of allowing for more urban style development in close proximity to that property, and would trigger those environmental studies, and we need to look at the appropriate setbacks and everything else in that regard. So that was kind of a long-winded answer, but happy to try any further if you have further questions, Councillor Gregg.
Follow up, Councillor Gregg?
I think that's helpful. I just want to be confident, I guess, that actions taken on that property couldn't place us in a position where, if there was future development applications on that other parcel, would compromise our abilities to ensure the protections are there as required, or as they currently would stand today, that they wouldn't be compromised because subsequent development happened to the south. Therefore, now we can cut all those trees down a lot easier than we could have yesterday.
Okay. I think that concludes then. All right. In that case, then I will call the vote. All those in favor? And that motion is carried, Madam Clerk. Thank you. That takes care of section 6. So we are back to a final item on section 7. Item 7F. It's recommended that the report CCRCW 0926 regarding emergency management consulting services be received, and that staff be authorized to release an RFP for emergency management consulting services for 2027 and a portion of 2026 prior to 2027 budget approval, and that the service for 2026 be funded from the one-time funding reserve, and that the funds for emergency management consulting services for 2027 be included in the 2027 budget for council's consideration. I would like to get this motion on the floor. The clerk will provide an overview of the open report, but then we will then proceed into closed session to continue the discussion on matters that need to be protected under closed session, and then come back out and do the vote on the open session motion. So first, to get it on the floor, I have Councillor Eccles moving it. I have Councillor Dobreen seconding it. So it's now on the floor for discussion. So I'll look to the clerk to do an introduction in open session.
Thank you, Madam Warden, and through you, this report seeks council approval, as you noted, to release an RFP for emergency management consulting services prior to the 2027 budget approval, with the intention of retaining a consultant during the last portion of 2026 and throughout all of 2027. Grey County has and is required to have an emergency management program, which has various components, which include a plan, staff training, education to the public, and annual compliance reporting as well. So as a municipality, Grey County is also required to have a community emergency management coordinator, also known as a CEMC. And this role and the administration of the emergency management plan is currently undertaken by a clerk's department team member. Resulting from a review of our department structure, the staff report recommends using a consultant to serve as Grey County's community emergency management coordinator to continue delivering on the legislated component of the program while options are considered for our longer term emergency management program. So as the motion notes, funding for this is proposed to come from one-time funding reserve for 2026 and then levy dollars in 2027. And the consulting services are unbudgeted at this time, which is why it is coming before you here today. There is as was noted, a closed session component, but if there are any open session questions, I can, along with other staff, try to address them if you have any.
Okay, so any questions at this point with regards to what has been presented as the open report? Councillor Gregg.
Interesting report. Thanks, Tara. This is one of those items that probably populates on a very inconsistent basis or just occasionally. When I first read it, I wondered, at our lower tier municipalities, is this a rule that it strikes me this is a rule that's potentially done off the side of the desk for a lot of municipal employees in the lower tiers? Is there the possibility, or has it been looked at before, of all, that one role serving all 9 municipalities? Are there any upper tiers that provide that role for all lower tier municipalities in the province? I guess ultimately is the question. And can it be done?
I think Randy has some thoughts that he looks like he is going to share, if that's okay.
Okay, so let me go to the CAO.
Thank you, Warden, and thank you for that question, Councillor Gregg. Through you, Warden. So with that, we just had a recent actually CEO meeting, and this is one of the items just to update them on in terms of this report coming forward to Committee of the Whole for consideration today. And just noting in terms of whether or not there would be potential interest, at least exploring what potential options might be in terms of some sort of shared services around emergency management coordination going forward. The initial thought was that there would be interest, at least in exploring it further, and that's one of the reasons why I think Tara and I are recommending and bringing this forward is for 2027 at least to have those consultant services provided by a consultant allows us to have that space to be able to have some further discussions with obviously our respective councils, possibly then through the Joint Missile Services Committee as well, and seeing if there's an opportunity there. With respect to whether or not there's other municipalities that offer this, that's our understanding is there's some that do currently provide emergency management coordination services, both at the upper tier municipality as well as services to member municipalities. Wellington County is one that I'm aware of off the top of my head in terms of that provides some of those services today to some of their member municipalities. So again, that's another opportunity to be able to look at maybe what makes the most sense, look at other alternative models. Is there interest from amongst our respective councils to look at this? This provides us with the option to meet the legislative requirements while we explore that potential option into 2027.
Okay, thank you. And okay, so I don't see any further hands up now, Madam Clerk, so I think this is a good time for us to go into closed session.
Thank you.
Okay, so in that case then, I will propose then that it's recommended that the Committee of the Whole does now go into closed session pursuant to Section 239(2) of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended to discuss, there are 2 matters. Number 1, labor relations or employee negotiations regarding QP, transportation, and OPSU paramedic services and a staffing matter. And number 2, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. And this is with regards to personal information. May I ask for a mover and a seconder? Thank you. Deputy Warden has moved it and Councillor Mackey has seconded it. All those in favor that we go into closed at 1:46? That is carried. So what we'll do is we'll take a moment to switch off the technology and also for staff to confirm that we have all the staff members in the room that we need to for these 2 items. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. So we've come back out of closed session and we are live again in our open session of the Committee of the Whole today. I can report that the committee met in closed session to discuss labor relations or employee negotiations and personal matters about an identifiable individual. Direction was provided to staff. So with that, we are still on the floor of discussion of item 7F. Is there any further discussion on the report that's been presented here in open and the motion that's been moved and seconded that is on the floor? Any further discussion? Okay, so Madam Clerk, I'm not seeing any further hands go up, so I'll call the question then. All those in favor? And that motion is carried, Madam Clerk. So that concludes section 7 and section 8. That allows us to go to other business, which is, as we already took care of the items in section 6 as well. So other business, we did defer from last time our return back from FCM. A number of us were participating there, and I wanted to give an opportunity to those who had attended FCM to provide. At this point in time, I would just suggest perhaps your one favorite highlight, and we'll go around the circle and I'll fill in anything that doesn't get mentioned by the others. So is there one that would like to begin? Okay, I'll just call on Councillor Boddy. Do you want to get started? Share one highlight from FCM, and then I'll move on to Councillor McQueen and the Deputy Warden.
Well, there's probably several, but the very last session on the last day was somebody named Zita Cobb, C-O-B-B, from Fogo Island, F-O-G-O, off the tip of Newfoundland. Her project is called Shorefast, and it's a way of looking at economic development in small communities as place and community being the center of it, and different than any other way I'd ever thought about things before. So that would be my highlight.
Thank you. Councillor McQueen?
Great button there. Yeah. Well, Ian took my favorite, but I will say this. Ian lived at Edmonton for 9 years. So we had a study tour that nobody else would have had. And we toured Brian was with us, and we had a tour of the Edmonton Council Chambers. We had a lovely lady that was a retired teacher, and I think she fell in love with us just because there was 3 mayors and we wanted to tour, and she made the exception for us, and what a building that was. And then later we had a tour of the Alberta Legislative Building, and again, that was I'd say a big highlight. And I know, you know, the part of being there was for a lot of other reasons in the FCM, but I would say Ian's tour was better than any other tour. I had put close to 20,000 steps on my phone. So you could see that we had a full day, and thanks to you, Ian, for doing that. And certainly there was a lot of great sessions. And one of the other things I will say, Madam Warden, that the higher level of our federal politicians weren't there, i.e. the Prime Minister, which generally is at the FCM conference, and you sort of get that. But I know he's a busy guy, and others as well in the opposition side. So anyway, I guess all the hot air is in Ottawa, not in Edmonton at that particular weekend. So that was maybe a positive thing as well. But anyway, glad to attend. One last comment I'll make is it's always about the networking. And I will say that from a lot of the social parts, you learn with FCM is different than going to the, provincial Roma or AMO. You talk to people from across the country that, well, what's a conservation authority? What's that? And, there's a lot of different things. One of the things I learned from a lot of rural municipalities in Alberta, two things. A big part of their budget revenue is from oil and gas. Up to 80% of their budget is from oil and gas. You know, so you can imagine how that, you know, from a taxation, because a lot of those rural municipalities are not the population, but they're large mass of land and that sort of thing. So one thing I learned was from one of the municipalities out there, that we talked about snow removal. And I know this is always something that I find at the early snow is how we put gravel in the ditch because it's not frozen. They tell their plow operators to keep that wing up until it freezes. And I thought, isn't that interesting? So anyway, we'll leave it at that. It was really an opportunity, and I would recommend anybody with regards to the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, because it's the networking that is the biggest part of learning so much. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. And there were indeed federal ministers there, and I know that there were a lot of important negotiations going on at the same time on other factors unfortunately, the fortunate thing is moving the conference around, so we get a chance to see and learn from different municipalities and different provinces. But when it's in Ottawa, it's much easier to be able to borrow some time from the federal side because they're right there next door. But in this particular case, I know that there were some pretty key negotiations going on at that point in time. So with that, then I will look to the Deputy Warden for a highlight.
Well, as Paul mentioned, certainly the tour that we got from Councillor Body was pretty cool. The ceiling of their council chambers was the part that I was enamored with. It was pretty cool. It just opened up like the Sky Dome. It was really cool. But as Councillor McQueen said, it's the relationships, so you build the networking, so on. I had the opportunity, and everybody I'm sure is aware of the politics that's going on in Alberta right now in relation to their place in Canada. I had the opportunity to stand and talk to a gentleman from Alberta. I don't know, I think he was from the more northern part of the province. And, you know, I don't want to stereotype anybody, but he was a classic Albertan, right? He's got the boots, he's got the jeans, he's got the hat, he's a big man. And so he saddled up beside me and he decided he was going to talk to me. And I'm glad he did, because I can't imagine a Canada without Alberta being in it. But I do have, from this gentleman, a clearer understanding of why some people in Alberta are very aggrieved with how they've been treated. I don't necessarily agree with what he was thinking, but I do have a good understanding of why he thinks the way he does. And I think as a group, as a country, we deserve, or rather we owe Alberta a proper response to their grievances. And whether they're real or imagined, we need to be part of that. And we can't just stand here and say, well, it'll never happen. Canada's always been here. It'll always be here. We need to work at that. And we need to do better as a country. And so anyway, that was the highlight for me. There was many highlights, but for me, that was the best part of the conference, was to talk to that gentleman from Alberta and get a real understanding of why many of them feel the way they do. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, so all good points, and I will just add to that. The session started on the day before the rest of the program started. It's always a bit confusing about how FCM organizes their programming, but I was able to catch the film Thinking Beyond the Market, a film about genuinely affordable housing. And it was put together by Dr. Brian Doucette, and who has been just started touring across the country at various locations to screen this. So they screened it at FCM, and it was quite fascinating. He had gathered interviews from over 30 different planners, policymakers, housing advocates from across the case, with real concrete examples about what has worked in various places. So that's one of those things, as my colleagues have mentioned, it's the informal discussions that you have at the lunch tables beside people that are from across the country on what they're doing and what's working well and what their challenges are. But it's also the formalized discussion. And I have to say, it was because yes, absolutely, the housing crisis and mental health, two big topics that continue to be laced right through the programming. We've heard it at the other conferences we go to as well. So it was inspiring to actually watch a moment in time, some shared examples of things that are working and where solutions are happening, and it keeps us going to go. We have to keep drilling down for our own solutions when we can see that yes, some people have started to put the pieces together in a way that's viable. So I appreciated that. I also appreciated the intentional inclusion of the gathering place where First Nations or I should say Indigenous representation who were there at the conference and non-Indigenous, that everyone was welcome to the space to be able to interact with each other again. We heard some formalized presentations, but it was also a moment to sit and have some tea together and be able to talk and learn and reflect on the experiences we have across the country. And I do think that it was appreciated. We were certainly well welcomed by the city of Edmonton, weren't we? They really pulled out all the stops to say, we are glad that these leaders have come from across the country to come and share in the experience in Edmonton. So I appreciated the field trips and even had a chance to meet with one of the city planners on housing. So it was definitely worth the trip out that way. Okay, great. Thank you very much. With that, then I will go to notices of motion. Any notices of motion to serve? Okay, and then finally, then a motion to adjourn. Thank you. Deputy Warden moves. Councillor Eccles seconds. All those in favor? We made it. Thank you. This virtual meeting is adjourned. We look forward to seeing everybody back in person at our next meeting. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good day.